welcome everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us from all around the world to this webinar. We're going to talk about building and developing tourist-friendly destinations. We're going to look at this sustainability of these destinations, and we'll definitely bring up the topic of how do we deal with destination development after this COVID crisis, and what are the changes that it will bring forward. I'm joined here today with a panel of distinguished speakers. We have Linh Vu, who is a special advisor in hospitality for CITYLAND Vietnam. We have Gregory Lanter, Chief Development and Construction Officer of Club Med. And then finally, last but not least, John Alexander, Chair of the Scottish Cities Alliance. Yes. So I suggest we start off with a short introduction of yourself. I'll introduce myself as well afterwards, and then we'll kick things off. So Linh.
Thank you very much, Olivier. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, even if it's virtually. So I'm the director of Key Hospitality Consulting, which is an advisory firm based in Vietnam. What we do is that we provide advisory services to hotel investors, starting from hotel concept to hotel planning to operator selection and transactions. So today I have the pleasure to represent CITYLAND Vietnam, who is the master developer for Forest Bay, which is a 170-hectare greenfield project based on Phu Quoc Island, which is the largest island in Vietnam.
Beautiful place. I had the chance to visit it.
Oh.
And the red pepper farms are amazing.
Thank you.
John, take it away.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to take part. My name is John Alexander. I'm a local politician in the city of Dundee. I lead the city council in Dundee, but obviously in the context of today's conversation, I am here representing all of Scotland's cities as the chairman of the Scottish Cities Alliance. And the Scottish Cities Alliance represents Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, Inverness, Perth, and Stirling. I haven't forgotten anybody, hopefully. And again, in that context, I'll be contributing to today's event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And then Gregory.
Yes, thanks. Let's say first, I'm very glad to be speaking to you, even though I would have preferred to be in March in Cannes for the MIPIM. I was last few days in Nice, just nearby Cannes, and I must say I was very sorry to see the state of tourism down there, and obviously that explains also the fact that we are having these MIPIM sessions online and not physically as we would all prefer. Myself, as you said, I'm working for Club Med. Club Med is a brand I'll tell you a bit more about, but definitely into creating destinations and creating destinations for the last 70 years. And myself specifically, I'm a kind of a Club Med baby guy in the sense that when I was a kid, I used to go to Club Med with my parents. I then, after this, just studied a bit, do a bit of an excursion into banking and consumer goods, but came back to Club Med, and I've been working for 15 years for Club Med in the real estate part of Club Med, which is developing new assets and transforming the current assets of Club Med. That's my part.
One big family, yeah, Club Med.
It is.
You're absolutely right. The south of France is definitely suffering. This year they lost MIPIM, they lost Cannes Film Festival. We know that Monaco Grand Prix always brings a lot of people as well in, so it's a big change. It's a big change indeed. Myself, I'm part of EHL Advisory Services. We are part of the École Hôtelière de Lausanne group, so EHL group. We do the, let's say, mainstream hospitality advisory services, probably in line with what Linh does. So new projects, but also valuations, concept design, and organizational restructuring. Since we are linked to the Hospitality University here in Lausanne, we also develop schools around the world and different levels, going from vocational programs up to bachelor and master degrees. And then last, the department I'm in charge of, it's we call it service DNA. So we look mainly at non-hospitality companies, but that still offer services or quite a bit of services, and that would like to improve their service levels towards their customers. So we have advisory services and bespoke training programs that we can offer there, and a whole other range of individual services. So voila, that's for me. Okay, interesting topic today. Like I said, we'll have a look at or we'll examine what are the factors that are involved in building great, attractive, sustainable destinations. How important is the branding part of it to make it work in the long term? How do we have to adapt maybe infrastructure there? We can even go beyond and talk about how investment is involved, how we can attract and achieve investor return on this. And we're definitely going to tie in the current situation. I believe that is the hot topic of today. It's not just looking at destinations. I think it's a topic that we've already dealt with on several occasions of MIPIM and even some of the other big conferences in the tourism and hospitality world. But it's really, how is this world now changing? How are these destinations changing? And it's not about just the urban destinations, which are the popular ones, London, Paris, Barcelona, just to name a few, but what else is coming up there? So I would suggest you each start off with some of your, let's say, key thoughts on this destination development, and then we can elaborate further. So who wants to take this? Linh, you want to start off?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great.
I think that in the particular situation of CITYLAND Vietnam, we are, of course, being very much impacted by the travel restrictions worldwide. But you may have heard that Vietnam has had quite of a low record of COVID cases. So as of today, the government in the country has been able to kind of contain quite successfully with 369 cases and 0 deaths. So the current situation for us is, I would say, let's say, of course, very impactful. The impact on the Vietnamese economy, I mean, the tourism loss has been, today, as of July, is amounting up to $7 billion in loss of revenues for the country. But overall, the outlook for the country is slightly better, I would say, than the rest of the world, with still, a target gross GDP for this year of 2.3%. That being said, I think that for our project as a master planner of a greenfield project on Phu Quoc Island, we are definitely in a position of a late mover's advantage. So initially we thought, that competing as a destination, being a late entrant, of course, would be detrimental, especially when you have, such performing destinations around us like Phuket, Koh Samui, Bali, Langkawi, I mean, you name it, all the, amazing and highly exposed islands and destination in Southeast Asia. But I think that what the COVID situation brought to us is actually an opportunity to really enhance our holistic approach in the development of our own destination. So, like I said at the beginning, we are the master developer of a huge private bay. located in the northern part of Phuket Island. It is what you can imagine, as a very raw piece of land. So it's really green and luxury, but it's underdeveloped. So we are doing everything from scratch. This COVID situation is forcing us to rethink the way we are, leading that development. So we were in the middle of the development in the architectural design of our first resort out of 5. And of course, the current situation is making us work and think and design our whole project differently. For instance, when we're thinking, of course, about circulation flows, maybe a year ago, we were not thinking about, really focusing on how circulation flows would happen within our whole site. Today, of course, this is a topic that we have been actively discussing with our designers and architects. How do we make sure that circulation flows and corridors and back of house and F&B areas can respond to the customer's expectations in terms of hygiene, in terms of safety, and all this new decision criteria that the travelers will take into account in the future.
Yeah.
So that's, for instance, one of the thing that we call contextual shift. So how do we change, the way we approach our own development within the new context, and how we do manage this new uncertainty? Because I guess this is, at the end of the day, this is where we're all, going through today as developers, as operators, as a destination, is how each of us is managing the current uncertainty and the upcoming or future expectations of our travelers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we talk lately. We talk a lot about how to regain the trust of our clients as well, of our visitors, and I think, or I believe that your side of the world is more advanced, better prepared. It's a first-hand observation I had. It so happened that at the beginning of the crisis, my parents were doing a trip around Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, wanting to end upon my recommendation in Phuket. What I heard from them is, well, we were still scrambling and trying to figure out what to do and so forth. In Vietnam, everybody was wearing masks. Everybody was taking the precaution. Probably a habit of some past virus outbreaks as well. So this could play in Vietnam's competitive advantage, where they're lagging maybe on the branding and the recognition as a destination. Or the mass destination that Thailand maybe represents today, it might actually be winning on the front of regaining trust and being regarded as a safe environment and better prepared. So, voilà, a little thought that sprung up. Okay, Greg, we're listening.
Yes, sure. Just to try and link it to what you said, and then I'll say a few words about this vision of destination creation for Club Med and what I can bring on the table. But it's just, I think, if we speak about COVID and its consequences, it's probably necessary to control our reactions right now. If we look at destination creation, and especially here, MIPIM, we're speaking about real estate, all the hardware that we are putting in place. In reality, the destination that we are creating, or that we are making, or that we are working on, are there for the next few centuries. And especially for Lind, the destination that you are creating, when it will first open, COVID will be long gone behind us, because there is one thing which is sure, that is not going to be there for the next 20 years. And I can put my hand on it. And otherwise, we will all rethink profoundly, but more profoundly, everything that we are doing, than what we are doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I would stay still on the long trends. I would say that there are obviously things that needs to be done on the next couple of years, that's for sure, and everybody is working on it. I am sure also that it will foster new habits for guests, especially, for instance, sanitary safety, which will have things triggered for many destinations. For instance, the destination that can't offer a proper hospital network to take care of people that are sick, for instance, these destinations would be in a need to evolve, because these trends of sanitary safety will remain. For the other trends that will go out of COVID, I would wait for a few weeks or a few months to know where we are going before taking very strong decisions. If we look at the long run, and a few words about Club Med, we are either a specialist or a leader, depending on which point of view you are taking it, of premium, all-inclusive, international family holidays, which is kind of a very specific market. And in this market, we are present in all continents with all clienteles, and we operate 70 resorts and developing this company 3 to 5 resorts per year. And if we link it to the destination creation, I must say that it's been Club Med's job for the last 70 years to create destinations. And if we go back in the 70s, for instance, Club Med was the first international operator to settle in Cancun, to settle in Maldives, to settle in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, or to settle in Bali. And how would it work at that time? It was quite simple. As being all-inclusive, you would find everything inside the Club Med. And as self-tour operating our brand, we would charter the flights and organize transfer, so that you could bring people to the other part of the world in the 70s and still have them enjoy a nice holiday, even without infrastructure locally. And I would say that today, we are still doing this type of things. We opened last year in Miches Playa Esmeralda in Dominican Republic, a new Club Med resort that is exactly in the middle of nowhere. And what would happen afterwards is, once this first infrastructure was in place, others would come, and that's what we are seeing in Miches Playa Esmeralda with the development of the Four Seasons, which is starting now. But everything else, in reality, has changed. Back 40 years ago, there was a few 100,000 people traveling the world, or a few million people traveling the world. Today, we are speaking about a few billions. At that time, you had only a few markets. Now, every country has its own market. Back in time, there was only a few destinations. Now, there are, in every country, destinations. Back in town, there was only a few weirdos being concerned by environmental impact of tourism. Now it's in the mind of everybody. And all these elements are changing, and people, customers, who were looking to be idle at that time are now looking to take the most out of their holiday and to come back with something from their holiday. So destination creation, I'm speaking about holiday destination, and especially leisure tourism destination, have some common points for the last 70 years, but there are profound trends that are changing and that will need us to adapt. And I'm happy that we can discuss this today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for these valuable points. I very quickly read that the long-term vision is of importance there. At the end of the day, it is truly a destination. Competitiveness relies on the ability to brand it successfully, to find a niche market, and that will contribute to its success in the long term. So definitely a valid point, and we see what the philosophy of Club Med is. I think Club Med was a first mover in many locations, and brought brought greater things to certain region because they just started off there. So great. John.
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with much of what both Gregory and Lynn have said already, and obviously in a Scottish context, many of the cities that I'm representing today have a real X factor, I suppose, in terms of the worldwide reputation that precedes Scotland as a destination for a number of different reasons. And some of that, I think, will help us in a kind of post-COVID-19 response, not least the fact that we're quite a large nation with quite a small population. So social distancing, kind of the rurality, the kind of environment in which we sit is something that is very attractive. But there's two strands to that, I suppose. One is the staycation market and the opportunities that arise, at least in the immediate aftermath of COVID-19. And then looking at that longer term strategy as we start to build back, I suppose, and seek to bring back those international visitors into Scotland. And I think a key component of that is going to be that reassurance message, as you know, others have already mentioned, and explaining exactly how we are approaching whether it be hard infrastructure, what is in place to support people, or whether it is about the kind of governmental response to COVID-19 and what has been mandated at a national level to ensure public safety. I think all of those elements are going to be quite critical, I suppose, in terms of supporting hospitality going forward. And within the Scottish context, you know, cities like Edinburgh almost sell themselves in terms of that international offering. We have a really diverse offering, a very diverse cultural offering. I think we're you know, if we look at just UNESCO designations, for example, 1 in 4 of the population in Scotland lives in a UNESCO city of some designation or another. And I think there are some unique attributes and selling points there. But I think very much the natural environment is going to be something that will draw a significant number of tourists in the coming months and years, hopefully. But that is all based upon the fact that we still need to have an infrastructure and a business base there in which to attract them to. And that, I think, in terms of the short-term response is going to be very critical, whether it's in a Scottish context or anywhere else for that matter. We're all seeing the impact, the significant impact this is having on individual businesses and that wider sector. But right now, the critical thing is survival. And we can't be in a position where in 6 months' time, we are trying to sell ourselves, you know, to the world, but we don't have the offering that was there 6 months previously. So there is a key line of work about supporting business through this very traumatic experience for at least, you know, the next 6 to 12 months in supporting them through that. I think all national governments have provided kind of a short-term response, business continuity grants, our equivalent of a furlough scheme to support individual employees. But the sector will not survive unless there is a longer term strategy and longer term support. And I think that's a key thing for me, both as a politician at a local level, but in the conversations I'm having at a national level. As I think Gregory had mentioned, in terms of the infrastructure available as well, it's really important that we don't stop the ambitious proposals that had been set out previously. If I give an example of my own city of Dundee, we opened V&A Dundee in 2018. That has transformed the perceptions of the city. It has transformed our offering, I suppose, in many ways, by making people aware of what the wider city has to offer. And interestingly, during the COVID lockdown within the UK, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Eden International to develop a new touristic offering going forward, which we are developing and moving forward with a feasibility study. And that was signed during the lockdown. So I think it's really important that we retain what exists within our localities in terms of that hospitality, that wider offering. We do as much as we can to support them. We make abundantly clear what the message is in terms of what you know, people can expect if they are international visitors in a Scottish context, how we are protecting them, because that will be a fear factor for many people about even just jumping on a plane, I suppose, and travelling a short distance, never mind a long-haul flight. And thirdly, it's about continuing to diversify and invest in culture in the longer term. So we can't have a knee-jerk reaction where we stop doing everything that we were doing we halt our ambitions and we just go back to where we were a year ago and try and push the reset button. We need to continue to, as I say, innovate and kind of lead from the front. And that's something that, you know, from an alliance perspective, we're very focused on. And investment has to be part of that, both at a local level and at a national level.
Okay. Very good, very good. Thank you for that. The alliance has been around for more than a decade, if that's correct. You manage different regions, different cities around that. So a lot of small differences that come together. Any way of maybe elaborating a little bit more on let's say a success story or a success action that has worked for all these different ones, that is, let's say, a general success?
I would, if I'm not sure it answers your question exactly, but it's just listening to John, I fully agree that there is a need to continue develop the destinations and to continue invest in what was planned to increase the offer. Two reasons. One is the fact that tourism will continue to grow. In the world of tomorrow, we will not stop having tourists, and many countries are discovering tourism and we continue to discover tourism. So we will need capacity to welcome these people. The best way to welcome this capacity without putting too much pressure on what exists is to have new things. Otherwise, the pressure will be unreasonable as it is in Barcelona, as it is in some part of the world today. So we have to develop more destinations, and in these destinations, develop the offer. Why develop the offer? Because if you look at things environmentally speaking, long-haul tourism, is it something that's going to be dead in the next decade? Personally, I don't think. I just think that stays will have to be longer, that people will have to stay longer. If you have people stay twice as long as they were staying before, you divide by 2 their carbon impact in reality per day they spent. And therefore, you need to have people be willing to stay longer. And for them to be willing to stay longer, they have to have things to do. It's not only infrastructure. It's not only I want to go to this museum or to this park or to this thing, but it is also entering into the local life in a way. If you want people to stay a month, it's not just about every day going to a museum. It's about during 1 month, discovering people, meeting people, integrating the local life in a way, and potentially during the month work a little bit from their holiday, because we have all learned how to work from the distance. So these things will be extremely important, and this is a big change. It's a change led by environmental meaning and environmental things that we need to take into consideration. And I think John is extremely well tackling the point. We need to continue to develop the offer and give things for people to stay longer, so that we reduce the impact on the environment, we reduce the impact on infrastructure, and we reduce impact on local population. For a local population, it's better to have someone staying 1 month, trying to understand the local customs, than having someone staying 3 days and multiply by 5 the number of people that will stay 3 days. So that's really a challenge that we have in front of us as a destination creation or enhancement for the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. Linh, is there anything you would like to add to that?
I think, of course, I do concur with what John and Gregory just said. And I think that Vietnam-wise, what we have been doing for the past months after the 2-week lockdown is that we did maintain, all the action and marketing campaign and the traction also that, we were putting to develop both the Vietnamese destination, but of course the focal destination. For instance, just to give you examples, Vietnam Airlines, who is the major national carrier in Vietnam, has resumed 90% of its domestic flights. On top of that, 3 months ago, they actually opened 3 new routes, domestic routes once again. Additionally to that, what we did on the Phu Quoc island is that the 12 major investors of the island, including CITYLAND, of course, we founded the Phu Quoc Investment Tourism Association. It was officially launched 3 weeks ago, which is an association that is collaborating with all the stakeholders involved in developing Phu Quoc Island as the Pearl Island of the region.
Mm-hmm.
By stakeholders, that involves, of course, local authorities like the Vietnam Tourism Board, like the province, government authorities of the province, but also local communities and all the players in the tourism industries, from travel agencies to transportation companies to service providers. So even though our market, I would say now, is being reduced due to the travel restrictions and the COVID situation, what we did is that we still focused our efforts and energy in developing the destination, but with a domestic scope, which allows us, first of all, to do some damage control in terms of tourism revenues. Of course, we lost visitors, but 3.5 million visitors for Kinh Giang province, which is where Phu Quoc is located, as of July 2020 is not a bad performance. So with summer holidays, Vietnamese families kept on traveling domestically. So they are discovering destination within their own country. And this is where we are trying to leverage on in order to once again do some control damage and still progress with our initial action plan.
I think this is something that for one, the Swiss are very good at. As soon as a crisis hits, financial crisis or even this COVID, people start traveling again heavily inside the country, which is good. It's important because Switzerland is not a mass tourism country. So the local, let's say the national population picks up quite a bit of the slack, and that might actually save some element of this tourism economy. John, you wanted to also add something to Greg's comment?
No, I was just going to say how important that last point that Lynn made was in terms of that, that opportunity to use the local context as almost a survival mechanism in many ways, at least in the shorter term, and that ability to promote staycations, because people are reluctant to travel or they are prevented from traveling to the destination they might have previously chosen. And so retaining the value of that industry within, in country is going to be really important. But hopefully that will also be a trend that can be built upon going forward. So, I think we're trying to run or ride 2 horses at the same time, to use that analogy, which is continue to plough a furrow in terms of looking at the international market, but make sure that we capture as much of the internal market we possibly can. And I know through anecdotal evidence, certainly, even in neighbouring areas in England, for example, just across the border, that Scotland is attracting much of that because they see, getting away from the big cities, the rurality of Scotland, the kind of romanticised vision that everybody has of the beautiful castles and the lochs and the Highland cows is a big attraction. So I think there's an opportunity in there as well. And I think we should not lose sight that whilst COVID-19 is having a hugely dramatic impact in many ways, it is a short-term impact, and that we need to build on, the successes for the future. And if we can retain an element of, what we've developed in those few months, then we should try to seek to retain it, I think, over the longer term.
Absolutely. Entering the fiber, the local fiber, so longer stays, more people. I also hear maybe bigger masses of people. What is the danger, or what are the risks that these masses and this invasion of people, even though they bring a lot of positive, they can also bring some negative. So what if this gets rejected by a local population? And what if they are not so happy to actually see these masses arriving?
That's a very important question, obviously. I think the current period has shown the importance of tourism to government, and probably out of it will reinforce the importance of the government action into tourism. It is important for government to regulate in a way the tourism in their country so that it doesn't create a rejection, as we can see in some destinations now. I spoke about Barcelona, there is Venice, which in a way, fortunately, is going to be free of very large cruise ships for a few weeks for them, but not for tourism industry. But I think this period is also highlighting how tourism is important for the countries. And I think government understands it now for those who didn't. And people understand it also because they see their friends, they see the impact it has on economy, they will see the impact it has on their job. So the importance of tourism is going to be very real for everybody, which is positive because people will probably accept this tourism better in the future, but government will also have to get potentially more involved into this, into making sure there is not too much pressure on people and infrastructure, but making sure also they do brand their destination the right way. They do bring the right clientele for their destination also.
Absolutely, absolutely. Linh, is this something that is going on in Vietnam as well?
Well, obviously, you know, we have almost 100 million people living in Vietnam. So when you're referring to mass tourism, that could be that could come very quickly in some destination. We have like Hoi An in Hanoi, even Ocean City. And CITYLAND as an owner developer, this is something, of course, that we have to take into consideration because like every investor, you always have this dilemma of, you know, how many hotel keys you have, how many guests are you going to accommodate on your destination, because this is what you control, right, as a greenfield master developer. But I think the reflection we had during the whole development of the concept is, first of all, when CITYLAND acquired that private bay, we went through an exercise of defining first who we were and what we were standing for. So basically, what we did as a you know brainstorming session is what are we trying to achieve here? This is a long-term investment because this is a privately owned company. So this is about building legacy, and this is about sustainable tourism. And once that we define those core values that would somehow help us take all the decisions along the way of our development, including destination branding, it helped us somehow plan the right product and also the right experiences that would attract guests that would share the same values that we do convey, that we want to, you know, the experience you create, of course, will attract the type of customers you also want to attract, right? So from that first assessment, this is how we said, okay, what we want is not to exceed a certain number of keys per square meter, or a certain number of keys, you know, or a certain number of people. And this is how we will manage our own destination within Phu Quoc Island. But of course, this has to be done again in collaboration with the other players, because we're not the only one on the island. So this is a discussion, a continuous discussion that we're trying to have with all, you know, our partners on the island, even though at the end of the day, you know, people may see us as competitors, but I think what we're trying to achieve through the association is really to have this open place where each of us will sit down and say, what do we want to do with Phu Quoc? What are we trying to build as a destination, and what kind of experience do we want to offer on, you know, the global tourism game? Because once again, you know, we compete domestically with other beach destinations. We compete regionally with very strong destinations and very mature destinations. And at last, we compete globally with the Caribbean, with the Mediterranean Sea, with Hawaii, wherever you want to go, Indian Ocean. So I think it's very important from the beginning. And once again, somehow we are taking advantage of our late entrance to the global game, is that we are learning a lot from what has been done in the past. We're trying to have a pragmatic approach of our own positioning within that game. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Without wanting to tout my own horn here, but when we talk about destinations, or we look at destinations also as a company or an institution, the element of getting into the local fiber to get buy-in, to bring value, to bring sustainability, is always also to look at how do we deal with education. And this is very often forgotten, and by government and by the private investors that are developing all these destinations. And then almost when the project is finished, 7 years down the line, they start thinking and saying, well, we've got thousands of rooms and shops and restaurants and museums, and we need to provide services, and we have nobody that can actually service these elements. So how are we going to do that? And I'm not talking about creating the managers of tomorrow, because that's always a possibility. But it's really, how do we get the people, the frontline people that are going to serve our guests? And this ties in with bringing value to, like Greg said, to the local fiber. It's like John said, it's looking on the long-term vision and raising that quality level. We say becoming a center of excellence at the end of the story. So one of the examples, and I'm sure, Lynn, you know it very well. One of the examples would be that we've established a school in Sanya.
Yes.
Sanya, definitely a big destination, very focused, lots of hotels, lots of huge properties. And how are they going to deal with all that manpower necessary? Absolutely. And preferably high level, high quality manpower? So I'm sure this is something on the mind of Club Med when they're developing properties as well.
Sure. And being tied to local people so that it can bring good things, which means employment, money, tax, development to the local people, is obviously a key element. And when you settle down in a very remote place, there is no way you can do differently. So setting up the school is indeed something that we are extremely willing to do, and we often do it in partnership with the local government once again, so that when we open the 500 plus people that we need for servicing the property can be hugely sourced locally, because that's the best way to get accepted by local people. It shows them the benefits of this property coming, and the benefit is having a job, having revenues, and having all what comes with these two very important elements in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That, you see, that's the problem. Working and talking with passionate people and experts in their field, we always run out of time very quickly, and we could go on for hours and hours. I see that that our time is nearly over. So maybe just two, three key points, closing remarks from each of you, and then we can wrap this session up. Maybe hope that we can come back for more. So, John.
You're on mute.
There we go. Yeah. I knew there was one of us going to do that at some point. It just happened to be me. So I think it's been a really good conversation. You can see the theme of the conversation is very clear, no matter the kind of geographical context. We're all wrestling with the same issues. And I think one of the key things that I've been thinking quite a lot about is the word, I suppose, experience. And it's people's experiences that are going to determine their choices and their future choices as well. And your point there about education, about creating a capacity within the sector itself and a high quality skill set is what is going to drive the industry forward. Because if people have a bad experience, that taints the entirety of their holiday in many regards. People often remember a bad experience, but they don't always remember all of the positives. One bad experience can outweigh 100 positives. So it's really important that we get that right. And that's what we're looking to develop. And when I talk about experiences, it's experiences on an individual basis of visiting a cafe or a restaurant. It's the context for the city, how vibrant, how beautiful, how clean the streets are. And it's those, museums or other destinations as well, and trying to make sure that we put ourselves in the shoes of a tourist coming to our city or our region for the first time. That has to help inform our thinking and our strategy going forward. So our strategy in a Scottish context is very much trying to get into tune with some of those key segments or key areas that we're looking to attract people from. And I think that's going to be really important for all of us going forward, because we are all competitors in a global context, slightly different, I suppose. I don't think there'll be many people deciding between Vietnam or Scotland. I'm not sure they're the same thing, but we offer something different, and we are all competing for the same number of tourists. And I think it's that brand awareness and having a really strong brand and awareness of that brand and messaging is going to be a real cornerstone for any long-term strategy, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well put and nicely summarized. Linh, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, with pleasure. I think that in our case, what we learned from the other destinations is that it is actually crucial to know exactly who you are, your own identity, your own DNA. Once that you have defined that, it's much easier, and the experiences that you're designing for your guests and your travelers would actually flow very easily because you're being authentic. You know where are your strengths and your weaknesses, so you know how to compensate or how to improve. For instance, human resources, as you mentioned, is obviously key in travel and tourism. This is the essence, really, of our industry. Once that you have managed, to create those experiences, like John just mentioned. Try to really keep some openness, I would say, given the time we're going through. It's very important for every owner, investor, developer to be able to be agile and to adapt quickly to whatever, contextual shift it may happen. So I think that it's great to have a backbone for your own vision, for your own destination, because this is what will differentiate yourself on the global market, but try to keep some flexibility in order to be agile and flexible and to respond to whatever can or may hit you.
Very good. Very good. Greg, Paris gets the last word.
Yeah. For once, just very short, but ending up with a positive note. I strongly believe global tourism will continue to grow and is something that is now a commodity. People need tourism to live. I think what we need to tackle for these destinations is sustainability and acceptability. For these elements, what we need to have is indeed ways for people to potentially either go next to home or stay longer, and then have a diversity of experience that allows these longer stays. And I'm very convinced about this. And on our side, in Club Med, we'll do whatever we can to make sure it is feasible. Thank you for these moments.
Thank you all three for a great conversation. Some really interesting thoughts brought forward. And if possible, I'm looking forward to continue this conversation on the upcoming Paris event. I believe it's going to be in September. So maybe we get a chance to connect there and to continue this. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you soon. Cheers.